Going over the clothing worn by people in ancient Roman society or Roman dress. If you look on page 16 in your textbook, you'll see the Cornelian family for what would be considered a formal family portrait. I'm sure that you've had the experience maybe of being dragged to a formal family portrait by your parents. And what you would wear in a picture such as that, as what you see on page 16, isn't exactly what you would be wearing as an everyday dress. And it's no different for the family that we're looking at here. Secondly, is that when we think about our formal dress that we wear, as a civilization or a culture, I think that we could all settle on that for a man, it would be a suit and maybe with a tie, obviously. And for a woman, it would be a dress. And so even the particular genders have various stereotypical clothing that you would associate with the civilization. And so for Rome, it is no different, for they are singularly identified with one item of clothing that you can see the father of the family and the children in the family wearing on page 16, and that is a toga. But we'll get to that in just a moment. So let's start from the very basics, which of course would be underwear. What did the Romans wear? Well, they did have an item called subjugaculum, which is essentially a loincloth, but it would rarely be worn and usually only be worn if a man were doing something like participating in a athletic activity. As you can see on the left-hand side, it's a gladiator that has a sword in their hands. But most of the time, this subjugaculum, a loincloth, kind of like what you would see like a sumo wrestler would wear, would not be worn. Instead, the basic and universal undergarment is the tunica. Every single section of Roman society would wear the tunica, either by itself, as you can see both of these people have in the picture, or as something under something else that they would be wearing. And when I say all sections of Roman society, I truly mean it. If you look back on page 12, you can see the two boys are wearing a tunica, and the slave Davus is wearing a tunica. Back on page 6 for chapter 2, you see both of the girls wearing a tunica. Everybody would wear the tunica, and as they are in the country in Baiae and not out in public, that's all that they would wear, and it would be the garment essentially for everyday behaviors, out playing, goofing around, but not in public. Once you enter into public, then as an adult, you would have to wear additional things. Now, again, on page 12 for chapter 3, you can see that the boys are actually wearing a particular type of tunica, and that is the tunica lataclavia. And it tells to me when I see them that they belong to families of the senatorial class. Their fathers are the rank of senator. And you know it's a tunica lataclavia by the purple stripes on either side. And so when we see the boys, they are always going to be wearing this. Girls, on the other hand, again on page 6 of the textbook, they just wear a regular old plain tunica without any of sort of adornment. And so it's only for boys and men that would be of the senatorial class wearing the tunica lataclavia. Now, as I said before, the toga. It is the singular clothing item most associated with the civilization of Rome, and there were several of them. And let's go through them now. The first one we're going to talk about is the toga praetexta. It is the toga of people who held imperium within the Roman government, and that is consuls who were kind of like co-presidents of the Roman government, and then right below them, praetors who served as judges. So not all senators would wear the toga praetexta, and as a matter of fact, on page 16, you see Cornelius is not wearing it, but only those who had imperium, which is the word for power. And thus they, as particular kinds of senators who have risen and been elected to those positions, again, consuls, kind of like co-presidents, and praetors or praetors, who of course would be the judges, like Supreme Court justices, what we would have, would be wearing it. And also children. And so when you look at the page 16, you can see that both of the children, Cornelia and Marcus, have on this toga praetexta, which literally means the bordered toga. And so it has a purple border or a purple stripe. People think that on page 16, Cornelius, that's a purple stripe, but that's on his tunica, the tunica lataclavia that he is wearing. Moving on, and also too, you would know that somebody is a holder of imperium power by the fact that they would have carried in front of them, if they were in public, the fasces. The fasces are an axe that has a bundle of rods tied around it, and that fasces then becomes the symbol of power along with the toga praetexta that, of course, the consuls and the praetors would be wearing. Now, after a child comes of age, he no longer is going to wear the toga praetexta. And also in the pictures that you've been seeing for Marcus and Sextus on page 12 and then in the later chapters as well, not only do you see that they wear the toga or the tunica lata clavia, but they also wear a bulla. A bulla is kind of like an amulet or a locket necklace. It's not a locket, but a kind of a necklace, and you can see it here being worn by this young Roman. And it's given to them on the 8th day of their life to wear as a not good luck charm, but an amulet that would ward off evils, as it were. And in the 16th year of a child's life, they will undergo a ceremony, a coming-of-age ceremony, in which no longer are they going to be considered a child, but they become a man, and they stop wearing the bulla at that moment. And not only do they stop wearing the bulla, the children, the boys, would no longer wear the toga praetexta, and then they would instead put on the toga virilis, or the toga pura, which virilis means manly toga, and pura means pure or plain white toga. And there you can see the toga virilis or the toga pura. And that's exactly what Cornelius is wearing on page 16, just the plain white toga that every adult male citizen has to wear in public. It is a requirement, and again, of any clothing item, it is singularly identified with Roman culture and the Roman civilization as their dress. Now, there are other togas that one can wear as well. And this is the fellow here with the dark toga, toga sordida, literally mean the dirty toga, as in the darkly colored toga, the toga pulla, which is this right here. And you would wear the toga sordida or toga pulla, it is known by either term, when you are mourning someone. Someone in your family has died, and thus it is a symbol. Kind of like the tradition is that when you attend a wedding, that people often wear black as a symbol of mourning. And that's exactly what here this toga sordida or the toga pulla would be. This is in a meeting of the Senate from some fictitious show or movie depicting ancient Rome. And here you can see, I can point out the fellows who are the consuls and the praetors within the Senate, because they're wearing the, of course, toga praetexta, whereas others are just wearing the plain white toga. As you can see in the back, these senators right here are just wearing plain white togas, whereas here, this guy right here has on the toga praetexta, and they're, of course, honoring the fellow here who has lost someone, obviously wearing the toga sordida. The toga picta. The toga picta is a bright reddish purplish toga that would be worn on the greatest day of a Roman's life. Now, the goal for every Roman boy is to grow up one day and to gloriously lead the Roman army into battle to a great victory. And if you did this, if you did something so fantastic or so great in which you won a battle, there had to be 5,000 of the enemy killed in this battle. If you come back to Rome and the Roman Senate deems that your battle was so important and so great that they will honor you with a parade known as a triumph. The triumph is the term for the parade. And essentially, what you would do is you would paint your face red with cinnabar. As you can see, here is a fictitious display of Julius Caesar. This is Julius Caesar from the HBO series Rome. You put on your toga picta, and you have a parade in which you go through all of Rome. As you can see, you start way over here in this area. You come by the Tiber River, which is the river that flows through Rome. You actually go through the Circus Maximus, which is where they put on chariot racings, go around the Palatine Hill, and then you come through the middle of the city itself, the Forum, where, of course, the rostra, the speaker's platform, would be located right here, up onto the Capitoline Hill. And in your parade, you would actually have floats and all sorts of other things that would be thematic of the people or the enemy that you have defeated in the battle. To give you an example, when Cleopatra was defeated with the forces of Egypt by the Romans, then in that parade it would feature like live crocodiles on floats from the Nile River or hippopotami. And at the end, perhaps also, would be the commander that you have defeated walking along in chains. Basically, it's kind of like a display of your power. Now, interestingly, that here, the fellow behind is a slave. And all along the way, as everybody is screaming out your name, you are dressed like a god. You are being worshipped like a god almost by the Roman citizens themselves as they line up cheering you on. And this fellow back here is whispering something in your ear the whole time. And he is whispering essentially, memento mori. Remember that you're going to die, that you are not truly a god, even though this is the glorious, most glorious day that a Roman man could ever have experienced, dressed in the toga picta. And that is the route of the Roman triumph, the Triumphalis Romana, the victory parade, where you then get onto the Capitoline Hill and dedicate all the spoils of your victory. And again, the only way in which you get this is that it has to be granted by the Senate. The Senate has to deem your accomplishment so great that you get that victory parade. The next, or the last toga that I talk about is the toga candida. And this is the bright white toga of the office seeker. You want to stand out while you are running for office, and in doing so, you would wear here again this toga candida. And they didn't have normal soap like what we do, so believe it or not, in ancient Rome, they used urine, which contains ammonia, to bleach. Now, they wouldn't obviously put the urine directly on it, but they had a process by which they mixed it with water, and they bleached it, and then to get it even brighter, they would obviously dust chalk with it. And it allowed them to stand out as they were running for office. And that word candida, which means bright or bright white, is now why we call people who run for office candidates. And thus it is the toga candida, bleached as bright white as it can get, and then even dusted with chalk. So just to review really quickly, again, you have the first toga, toga praetexta, worn by those who have imperium, consuls and praetors, and children. But when a child comes of age, you're going to take your toga praetexta and your bulla. You're going to dedicate them to the household gods, known as the Lares and the Penates. Of course, they're the gods Jupiter and Mercury and Apollo, all those that line the back of my room, but those are more like the gods of the civilization. Your household gods, the gods of family in your household, would be known as the Lares and the Penates, and it would dedicate that to them, and thus begin as a man wearing the manly toga, or the toga virilis. You had the toga sordida, or toga pulla, the toga of mourning, toga picta, in which, of course, a conquering general would wear in the Roman triumph. The toga candida, the person who is running for office, wanting to stand out in a crowd. And then we have left out, up to this point, women. Girls would wear toga praetexta like boys, but adult women had two particular clothing items. One was the stola. The stola is the dress that a woman would wear, and here you can see the stola that this woman is wearing is the color of blue on the right-hand side. She has a full arm-length tunica worn underneath it. Again, that tunica is the basic undergarment. And if they were fully decked out in formal wear, and you can see it actually on page 16 with Aurelia as the adult woman. She has a white tunica undergarment, on top of that a white stola, and then a glorified shawl that would drape over you, which is known as a palla. And the palla here on the left-hand side is obviously the color kind of cream beige, off-white if you would like. So she has on, this woman on the left, a blue tunica, the basic undergarment. Then she has a stola on top of that, and on the right-hand side, her stola is actually blue, so it's reversed, the two women. And then she has this palla, and this palla could be used in a variety of ways as kind of like a shawl or draped over her, or even she could put it over her head if she's on a trip and doesn't want to get her hair dusty and those sorts of things like that. So this is the essential clothing items for adult women. The stola, which is the dress, and the palla, which of course is the glorified shawl. So that's it for Roman clothing. Hopefully you can use that video to help you when you are preparing for whatever quiz or assessment might come up.